As Donald Trump's one big beautiful bill hangs in the balance, a Republican senator has gone on live TV and not only exposed the lies of Trump's one big beautiful bill, but is effectively threatening Trump on air by pointing out that he and three of his colleagues have the votes to kill the single biggest piece of Trump's domestic agenda. Talk about bold. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, in this day and age, with the political stakes such as they are, it's rare to find a Republican lawmaker who has enough principle, integrity, to actually openly defy Donald Trump in this way. But one of the few is Republican Senator Rand Paul, who is in many ways a terrible person, like many ways, but is so consistently libertarian that he's calling out the profligate one big beautiful bill and is threatening to basically kill it. And now Trump can only afford to lose 3 votes in the Senate. If he loses 3 votes, it becomes a 50-50 split, and then J.D. Vance, the vice president, can break the tie. If Trump loses 4 votes, that bill is dead. This is Rand Paul on Face the Nation.
Well, we hear from other senators who also get complaints from their people in their districts, but they're falling in line. Do you have 3 other Republicans who will stand with you to block this bill?
I think there are 4 of us at this point, and I would be very surprised if the bill at least is not modified in a good direction. Look, I want to vote for it. I'm for the tax cuts. I voted for the tax cuts before. I want the tax cuts to be permanent. But at the same time, I don't want to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. So I've told him, if you take the debt ceiling off the bill, in all likelihood, I can vote for what the agreement is on the rest of the bill. And it doesn't have to be perfect to my liking, but I can't be. If I vote for the $5 trillion debt, who's left in Washington that cares about the debt? We will have lost. But the GOP will own the debt once they vote for this.
But
So there you go. He's desperate. He's like, man, I really, Donald, don't make me humiliate you by voting this thing down. But I'm going to vote it down, and I've got the votes necessary to do it if you don't take a debt ceiling provision out of the deal. Now, that's the deal breaker for Rand Paul. He's worried about increasing the debt ceiling, which allows the federal government to borrow more debt to pay its bills. It was raised multiple times under Donald Trump in his first term. It was raised under President Biden after Republicans basically played chicken with the debt to extort some concessions out of the Biden administration. Rand Paul doesn't want to raise the debt ceiling again, which is interesting because, it's a mark against how fiscally irresponsible the Trump administration is and intends to be, that they feel that they have to raise the debt so much, or the debt ceiling so much, to pay their bills. It's like, okay, well, clearly you're trying to create a bunch of wiggle room for spending on down the line as well. That's the crux of Rand Paul's issue with this particular piece of legislation. Now, it's somebody like Josh Hawley, a MAGA Republican senator from Missouri who styles himself as a populist. His beef with the bill is that it cuts Medicaid, which is true. It does cut Medicaid, and Republicans are lying about that. And speaking of Republican lies, Rand Paul has this to say about the big, beautiful bill.
Just heard the Treasury Secretary say a number of things, dismiss the potential price increases that could come from the tariffs when it comes to retailers. He also played down the cost of this tax and border bill that just passed through the House. Do you agree with his math?
Well, the math doesn't really add up. One of the things this big and beautiful bill is it's a vehicle for increasing spending for the military and for the border. It's about $320 billion in new spending. To put that in perspective, that's more than all the DOGE cuts that we found so far. So the increase in spending put into this bill exceeds the DOGE cuts. When you look just at the border wall, they have $46.5 billion for the border wall. Well, the current estimate from the CBP is $6.5 million per mile. So if you did 1,000 miles, that's $6.5 billion. But they have $46 billion, so they've inflated the cost of the wall 8-fold. So there's a lot of new spending that has to be counteracted. But essentially, this is a bill by the military-industrial complex advocates who are padding the military budget. There's going to be a lot of extra money. Look, the president has essentially stopped the border flow without new money and without any new legislation. So I think they're asking for too much money. And in the end, the way you add it up to see if it actually is going to save money or add money is how much debt are they going to borrow? Five trillion over 2 years. It's an enormous amount.
Right.
So again, this is Rand Paul exposing the fiscal irresponsibility of the one big beautiful bill, which again, Republicans say, no, it's very fiscally responsible. It's going to save money. Well, no, it adds to the deficit. It adds to the debt. And it purports like this is the reason that Elon Musk is so critical of this, is it just vaporizes the professed savings of Doge. Now remember, Doge promised $2 trillion in cuts, then $1 trillion. Then they said about a month ago, okay, we've got $150 billion that we can cut in savings from the federal budget. This is going to vaporize. It doesn't codify those Doge savings into law. It doesn't codify them at all. It actually does the exact opposite. And so this is why Elon Musk publicly opposes the one big beautiful bill. And so I think what Rand Paul is also trying to do is to appeal to people who might be sympathetic to the mission of Doge and Elon Musk. Like, hey, listen, this is really going to screw over Musk. It's going to screw over Doge. The fact of the matter is Trump really doesn't care about that, because Trump in his first term added to the debt and deficit. I mean, he deficit spent all 4 years he was president, even before COVID, so he wasn't fiscally responsible then. He contributed to more than $8 trillion added to the national debt, the single greatest contribution in a 4-year period. So he's never been a proponent of fiscal responsibility. He just tries to weaponize that rhetoric to his advantage. And Rand Paul is indicating the emperor has no clothes in this respect. One last clip.
That was the number that the secretary was quibbling over. The president has taken note of some of your skepticism, and he did tweet yesterday saying that if you, Rand Paul, vote against his massive border and tax bill, the people of Kentucky will never forgive you. Do you consider that a threat? And do you know if you have 3 other Republicans who will join you to block it from passage?
I had a very good conversation with the president this week about tariffs. He did most of the talking, and we don't agree exactly on the outcome. But when I come home to Kentucky, I talk to the Farm Bureau, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the bourbon industry, which is opposed to the tariffs. I talk to the cargo companies, UPS, DHL, all of their pilots are opposed to it. I talk to the hardwood floor people. I talk to the people selling houses, building houses. I have no organized business interest in Kentucky for the tariffs. So I think it's worth the discussion, and it's worth people remembering that the Republicans used to be for lower taxes. Tariffs are a tax. So if you raise taxes on the private sector, that's not good for the private sector.
Well, that was.
And again, he then confirmed that he has at least 3 others who will block this bill in its current form. But yes, of course, Trump is low-key threatening Rand Paul. He's low-key threatened another Kentucky lawmaker in the United States Congress, Thomas Massey, a United States representative who, like Rand Paul, opposes the big, beautiful bill on libertarian fiscal responsibility grounds. And again, you can tell Rand Paul doesn't want to be in the situation. Kentucky is deep, Trump country, but to the extent that Rand Paul has principles, he's trying to stay true to them, even in the face of extraordinary political pressure and potential political backlash. And again, so many other Republicans have purported to do the same, like Chip Roy, but they end up folding. Will Rand Paul? I don't know. But it says something that he feels, as uncomfortable as he is, comfortable enough to go on live TV and say, yep, I've got enough people to block this. I really don't want to. I'm hoping that Trump will cave and, take the debt ceiling provisions out of the bill. And I should point out that this is what makes this so complicated, because they have to raise the debt ceiling enough to pay America's bills. If they don't, and I think the X date where we hit the debt ceiling is, it's coming up. I think it's July. I think it's early July. That risks a potential default. And if we default, that would be not only domestic economic catastrophe, it would be global economic catastrophe, the likes of which we have not seen in decades. It would make the issues that we experienced during COVID look like a walk through a very sunny, very welcoming park. So it's not like Rand Paul is totally right on this, in the sense that you have to raise the debt ceiling. You just need to start cutting spending in advance if you want to avoid, borrowing debt to pay the bill. Well, part of that ship has sailed. So again, these are two competing interests clashing with each other. And it just betrays the fact that the GOP's notion of fiscal conservatism, they've never held true to it. You have, again, some outliers like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey. And right now, them attempting to uphold those fiscal conservative values is running full court press right into Donald Trump's domestic political agenda. And it's almost like they're destined for a collision. Will Trump intimidate them enough to back down? It's possible. It hasn't worked with Massey. I don't know if it'll work with Paul. But again, he can only afford to lose 3 votes in the United States Senate. If he loses 3, J.D. Vance can split the tie. But if it's 4, at least 4, as Rand Paul, I almost called him by his father's name, Ron Paul. Like Rand Paul says, that's it. And Trump will have to come to the negotiating table with Republicans. And I imagine he's not going to enjoy that at all because it makes him look weak. So we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.